Mech pilots, online. BattleTech manuals, online. Long-term memory, offline. All systems bungled. Initiating BungleTech podcast.
In our 15th deployment of BungleTech, my spheroid co-host Michael and I savor the flavor of BattleTech as we share our favorite flavor text excerpts from the BattleMech manual and campaign operations. We highlight the absurdity of a recent Solaris VII tournament in our battlefield highlight. Discuss both a targeting and critical hit mistake that made units so much harder to kill. And read an excerpt from Behind the Stick written by Jason Hansa. So cleanse your palate, MechWarriors, with a hearty bite of Kolash. This deployment is gonna be extra tasty.
Bonus objective. Extraordinary proclamation. Initiating.
Friends of BungleTech, before we start today's episode, I want to share some exciting news regarding our Patreon. Firstly, I want to take a moment to welcome our newest patron, Technician Dire Situation. You may remember some tidbits about him from our Insert Your Name BattleTech Favorite Survey episode. Thank you, Dire Situation, for supporting our bungling adventures. Now get to the mech bay and patch up the bungler's lower arm actuators before its arms fall the heck off. On to more news. As per the request of you, our venerable listeners, we've implemented 2 new features on our Patreon. 1. A new tier, bondsperson, for those that aren't interested in draws or merch that still want to support our glorious endeavors. Or perhaps more appropriately, those who are indentured to support our glorious endeavors. And 2. We now have implemented loyalty rewards for continuous pledgers of Technician and up. These rewards currently include stickers of our logo's character, the Bungler, in a variety of different situations, artsy mini posters using our character art, and custom BungleTech apparel. This means that by supporting us on Patreon, you get access to behind-the-scenes BungleTech content, are entered into monthly draws for bespoke items and participation opportunities, have the opportunity to shape podcast content in various forms, and get sent exclusive merchandise rewards. You heard me right, MechWarriors. That is a lot of cool stuff if I do say so myself. If you are interested in any of this, you can find our Patreon linked in the description or by searching BungleTech on patreon.com. Now, without further ado, on to our main segment.
Primary objective. Podcast topic segment. Initiating.
Hello, my MechWarrior friends, and welcome to episode 15 of BungleTech, a BattleTech podcast. Today, I am honored and privileged to be once again joined by the intelligent, the beautiful, the compassionate, the sensual Michael. Say hello, Michael.
Hey, Nathan, and hey, listeners.
Michael, how excited are you for our episode today?
8.
8 out of 8? That's amazing. That's 100. Or no, you meant 8 out of 5. Whoa, you're just blowing through the ceiling, baby.
Yep, I'm supremely excited.
I am equally hyped as well, good sir. So for our listeners, today we're doing something fun. We're taking a look at all the flavor text in BattleTech. Correction, not all the flavor text. That's way too much flavor. We took a look at campaign operations in the BattleMech manual and shows our flavor text highlights. And today, we are gonna share them. But before we get into that, I just want to share a future episode we have planned, because once again, it is involving your participation. On the topic of reviewing BattleTech literature, get hyped for our April episode of BungleTech, the Review Remembrance. We'll be taking some time to collect and reflect on all the reviews of BungleTech we've gotten from you, our honorable listeners. And then, in the Review Remembrance, we will share your reviews, respond to them in kind, and even review the review itself. It's gonna be weird and a blast. If you want to contribute to this episode, make sure to leave a review on the podcast platform you listen on. If your platform doesn't allow reviews or only allows textless reviews, like Spotify for example, there are a few options to get us your content. 1, you can send us an email at bungletech@outlook.com. Or 2, you can leave us a voice message at the Spotify for Podcasters link in the show description. And honestly, if you leave us a voice message, we may even air it on the podcast. Exciting! Deadline to submit your review for it to be included in our April episode is April 7th, 2024. So much time. If you are 8 out of 5 for this episode, Michael, what are you for our April episode?
I think this will be a lot of fun. I guess I will give this a 12 out of 11, and I will leave it to you to decide whether that's more or less than 8.
I think 12 out of 11 is more than 8 out of 5. No, wait. No, that's not what I mean. No. I'm a fool. It's clear.
See,
it's the opposite. Math. No, it was a trap. I was so confident. All right, well, without further ado, let's get into today's topic. Before we start with our list, we want to share a favorite flavor text moment from our Patreon, Technician Klint. We perfected your plasma rifle, spheroid. That will be one assault mech. Clan Diamond Shark regarding the plasma cannon in the BattleMech manual. I asked why Technician Klint liked this, and he just thought it was such a cool little clan cultural moment and so accurately reflected that clan attitude and that inner sphere relationship dynamic. Pretty cool. I like it. I visualize a scene when I read this line, you know?
Set the scene for me, Nathan.
The scene is, you have a mercenary sitting in a hot tub. It's a bulky chick, and she has 2 babes in each arm, you know?
2 babes in each arm.
Yeah, 2 babes in each arm, yeah. So she's surrounded by these 4 muscular men. Full hot tub, arms around. She's gigantic, right? She's almost elemental-like in nature, but she's just naturally born that way. That's the scene I see. Then you have this clanner come up, you know, chin up, carrying over their shoulder this plasma rifle. Because clanners, you know, eugenics, as we talked about how much Tex loves eugenics, have really strong backs. So carrying this like 10-ton weapon over their shoulder while in the hot tub, lifts the chin up, delivers the news. The mercenary in the tub doesn't even remove her arms from the babes. Just sits there, confident nod. There you go. Is that what you were visualizing?
Not exactly, no. But I appreciate that.
I'm pretty sure that's what Technician Klint was visualizing.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you for sharing that with us, Klint. So on to our list. We did 10 each. So let's start with your number 10 pick, Michael.
All right. So my number 10 pick is for the antagonizer pilot ability from Campaign Ops. Come on, you greasy tin spawn. I thought you puppies could fight. And I like this because I don't actually understand what it means. Like, it barely makes any sense. And, you know, that sort of fits for, like, something that someone would be screaming at you over open comms in the middle of a battle.
It's when they're delusional from overheating. They just improvise random words to make an insult. And the person from another culture, likely, just knows by the tone that it is greatly offensive. I like it. I like it. I also visualize that scene.
Who would be the shouter in this case?
The shouter in this case is like a 7-year-old that has snuck into his daddy's Atlas and is like piloting it through a city, crushing all these civilians as the police are coming after him. And he antagonizes the police because he's a rebel. He's played too much GTA, man. And it's rotted his brain. I hear that happens.
Come on, you greasy tin spawn. I thought you puppies could fight.
Boom, boom. Ah! Get out of the vehicle, son. This isn't a video game. You're killing real people. Exactly. That's totally the scene.
All right, what's your number 10?
It is animal mimicry from Campaign Operations.
I knew this would be on your list.
If you think the bark's bad, wait till you feel my bite. And I like this because exactly that. It's something that you can interpret completely antagonistically, or you can also interpret it sensually. And as the master of sensuality, Michael, I think you'd agree that this is quite a sensual thing to say to someone.
I do think it's got a similar sort of doesn't quite make sense vibe, but I still like the fighting puppies better.
All right, you're number 9. Give it to me. Give it to me.
Continuing with the animal theme, the heavy horse pilot ability. Holy crap! Is that Brandt wearing a PPC? Just because I think that it's fun. I have literally never included or seen any infantry on our table, but certainly not mounted infantry. And I don't know, it's just kind of fun. It's a PPC animal technical hybrid. That's great. It's it's evocative.
Dude, I mixed up my scenes. That's the actual scene from the plasma rifle line. Whoops. There's just so many scenes playing out. I'm just mixing them all out.
Wait. Is the Brandt with the PPC at the hot tub, like the MechWarrior sitting in the hot tub watching a Brandt walk by with a PPC?
No. It's the Clan Diamond Shark Merchant. That's Brandt. It's the person who's yelling. It's one of the babes in the tub. One of the babes, this bulky, strong dude, Not a lot upstairs, but, he's built where it counts elsewhere. And he yells it, so he's like, oh, Brandt, that's a nice PPC. And then the mercenary chick, she rolls her eyes, 'cause she's like, oh my God, good thing you're cute. Right?
Well, so you see, here the problem is that you only heard me read the line, and you didn't get to read the actual text where you'll see that Brandt is actually not capitalized. Brandt is not a name. Brandt is an animal.
Well, actually, I did know that, and the babe in the hot tub is an animal. No, wait, I mean, he gets confused. The diamond shark's an animal. They're eugenics, clanners, I don't know. It all makes sense. It's all connected, man. It's a conspiracy.
All right, what's your number 9?
From Campaign Operations, Heavy Lifter.
Why, looky here. I done caught me a locust. Hey, Marcus, go along.
I like this because I feel like anyone who pilots an Atlas and is fighting a locust thinks this is going to happen in their head. Oh, you can just imagine a big mech grabbing a 20-tonner and trying to huck it.
Which
funny.
faction does this Atlas pilot belong to?
The Steiners, of course, because they're all about those glorious heavies. Thank you, Catherine, for your continued compassion and wisdom. All right, Michael, number 8.
Number 8 is from the BattleMech manual for the VSP Lazer, a weapon I have never even seen on a mech, but I thought its description was fun with, note, your laser stutter is intentional. Because, I don't know, it sort of got the vibe of like a, 80s, 90s, disclaimer at the end of a commercial, or like a sticker on the side of this thing, because they got lawsuits. The company manufacturing these laser weaponry, they got too many returns one year, so they added this little sticker on the side of every new VSP laser leaving the factory to know, don't return it, it's supposed to flash. That's why you bought the variable speed pulse laser. It flashes. That's what it means.
It's a feature, not a flaw. Yeah, I like it. I can totally see that. I can imagine those 80s and really quick speak too. Really at the end of the commercial. Yeah, I can totally feel that. That's a good one.
All right, what's your number 8?
In Campaign Operations, Natural Grace. Cut that out, Derek. This is a battle arena, not a disco. I just love this because I'm visualizing, staying alive, but in a mech. What's a good mech that could dance staying alive? Probably a spider or a commando. They could bust out that staying alive action. Yeah, I think it's funny. I think it's funny first for someone to have the ability to manipulate their mech like this expressively, but also at the same time, someone getting frustrated with it. You just imagine people going into battle and, everyone's focused on the mission, like thump, 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 going to the mission. You just have Derek in the back, sort of strutting. He's moonwalking backwards, like, yeah, let's go. Another op4 to take out with my dance skills.
I actually had this one in my runners-up, but for an entirely different reason. I found this one funny because it implies the fact that discos have made a return in the BattleTech universe 1,000 years in the future. And I think that's kind of funny. We already don't have discos anymore, but apparently 1,000 years from now, discos are back, baby.
Disco, I think, would fit into the BattleTech universe, right? Because when disco evolved in our society, wasn't it a time of sort of economic... When did it... I thought it came out of like a culture of unrest, of sort of inequality. It was sort of about liberation. Disco is about freedom, free love, free, expression.
The sort of funny thing, both of us are too young to remember disco.
Hey, man. I still listen to the Bee Gees Staying Alive. That's all I'm saying. But you're right. We are definitely both too young to actually have experienced it in person. Go listen to the Bee Gees Staying Alive, everybody, if you haven't yet. That's a classic. I'm sure everyone has, but if you haven't, cool. You're number 7.
Okay, so this one's a little bit different. It's not exactly flavor text, but it was still in italic font, so I included it here. This is from the campaign ops defining a force section, where it's giving an example of like how you might use these rules. Jason wants to try something different, a sandbox campaign in the periphery where he can build up an impoverished, independent planet into a force to be reckoned with, or at least not quite so pitied. Defending the world will require far more military firepower than it can afford, so the only way to support this force will be extra-legal liberation of military supplies from the periphery's house oppressors. Jason decides on a pirate group. And I don't know, I just found this really fun when I was reading it because it's the sort of thing like I could totally imagine like shaking out while you were working on a campaign with friends. Accidentally turns out that you all want to play pirates instead. So I found it really fun to read, and I kept up with Jason throughout a bunch of other segments going through as his adventures unfolded.
I wonder if Jason is a real person. If someone knows, I know there are real people in the world named Jason, but I wonder if this Jason is based on a real person. If anybody knows, let me know. I'm curious.
If we ever talk to someone, if we ever get an interview with someone who helped work on campaign ops, we have to remember this question.
Sounds good.
There's no chance we will remember this, but...
Who is Jason? We must know who Jason is and why he wants to be a pirate deep down inside. What I like about that one, too, is that, and what I like about all the flavor text in general, is that it doesn't take itself too seriously. And that's what I think is such a strength about BattleTech. You have this crunchy game that people have a tendency to try to max min in a lot, yet the flavor text in the universe really makes fun of itself. Despite, this universe with these harsh political realities, these atrocities, it still finds a way to make fun of itself, and I really appreciate that.
It sort of, it really captures how this might unfold on a tabletop, not just, very self-serious in-universe stuff.
Yeah.
All right, what's your number 7?
My one's from the BattleMech manual in the medium-range missile launcher section. One giant leap backwards. It's like the Succession Wars in missile form. What I like about this is, first, it's a funny thing to say it's like the Succession Wars in missile form because we know how much of the technological infrastructure of BattleTech depleted and deteriorated in that time. One of the things I love about BattleTech is how there are weapons that clearly perform better overall than other weapons. But it's still interesting and fun to play with those worse weapons, and there's still reasons in the universe why those worse weapons exist. Part of the reason I love BattleTech, that's why this resonates with me a lot.
Yeah, My next one actually is in the same vein here. My number 6 is ballistic reinforced armor, which says, "At last, the autocannon's reign of terror has been brought to an end." Which, it's another joke at the expense of my beloved autocannons, which are numerically not great.
Yeah, that one's super funny. When I read that, I was like, oh, Michael's adding this to his list.
And you're right. There's quite a few places where we know the weapons aren't optimal. The people writing the game know the weapons aren't optimal. And, it's nice to sometimes poke fun at that because it does have a place in the universe. You're right. They do have a reason to exist. It's not like an in-universe lore, like explaining why they exist. It's more just, fun when you're reading the rules to be like, oh yeah, medium-range missile launchers, not great. But, they're here.
Totally. It's just fun. And these things are memorable. Like, these are little tidbits that are just so memorable to me. And honestly, they make me want to play it. Like, when I see one giant leap backward, it's like the Succession Wars in missile form. I've never played with medium-range missile launchers, but now I want to because of this.
Because you want to suffer.
Yes. Suffer with me, world. Let us suffer together. My 6th, I'll be surprised if this is not on your list, is in the BattleMech manual. It's regarding the supercharger. Well, sir, it all started when technician Barton told Davis to hold his beer. The reason why I love this one is it just, once again, there's a clear scene here that I see. And how else would someone think up a supercharger? Like, it's two people sitting beside each other, and the technician's like, I can probably get more power out of this thing. And doing something that is ridiculous, that literally has the potential to blow out your engine. Or not blow out your engine, to blow out your gyro. Or blows out something that really is bad.
Your legs,
whatever blows out your legs, your head, or something explodes. I forget.
Who knows? Who cares?
But you can totally imagine someone taking a bet, being like, oh yeah, next week's Spheres, I bet you I can make this thing go 20 kilometers faster in short bursts.
So I didn't actually have this on my list, and I think that's because I sort of view the BattleTech technology very different from you. I'm a car person. I like car bits. I like machines. I like complicated machines and technologies. The very notion of like, oh yeah, we just made the mech faster, that doesn't really like fly for me. So this one didn't resonate as much with me.
Well, I'm surprised.
But, fair enough. I guess, I haven't done research recently on how the supercharger technology works, but maybe I would appreciate it more after reading a 5-page Sarna wiki article about the functioning of the supercharger.
I think we can say that universally about all things BattleTech related. Oh, you don't appreciate it? You just got to read that 5-page Sarna article, and then you'll understand. All right. We have now done our top 5, and we have yet to find a similarity. I'm very surprised.
Those were our bottom 5.
Sorry.
Well, not our bottom
5. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
In between us 5. the top 5 after
yes,
the top
5 after the top 5. That's the best way to say it. All right, now we're going to get into the top 5 under the last 5.
Sure.
All right. What's yours, Michael?
All right, my number 5 is the BattleMech manual for the machine gun of, damn, he's 91 meters out. And I like this because, again, it's sort of like, it's an awareness of the rules. Like you mentioned earlier, that like everything's sort of, a little bit fun. We're having fun with the world this is in. And machine guns have a 3 hex max range. So technically, if someone's 91 meters away, I guess you can't shoot them.
That's funny. Yeah, I didn't pick up on that one, but that one's super, super good. You're right. Because that's one thing that people, when they're talking about the realism in BattleTech, they always say, machine guns only go 90 meters. To be honest, I don't know anything about real weapons, so I'm like, 90 meters is far.
I can't throw something 90 meters, but you're telling me this stick can fire a small projectile more than that? Incredible.
At a rapid rate, too? Wow. Yeah, that's funny.
All right, what's your number 5?
From the BattleMech manual on M-Pods, shocking shrapnel shower shreds savage source in the Solaris streak. And it's because it's alliteration. You want to make me love something, give me alliteration, and then I can imagine in that old-timey announcer voice. Next time on BattleTech Battles. I just love that. So, yeah, alliteration. It's really that simple. And totally, like, this is in a Solaris match. Like, you can imagine an announcer, that type of voice, using alliteration like this. Just very funny. Or even a newspaper boy, right? Running around the street. You know, saying this same thing, like it's a good title. So, yeah, alliteration, baby.
BattleTech universe is regressing even further. We now have newsboys shouting about the latest headlines in the streets
as they hand out bonus like disco records. If you subscribe for a year, you'll get this bonus disco record. The Bee Gees, they're back. All right, how about your number 4?
All right, for the campaign ops pilot ability jumping jack, these legs exist purely as a suspension system. And I like it because it's totally true. Both something that could be said in universe, but is also 100% something that your pilot on the tabletop would be saying. Because once you get jumping jack, you are jumping literally every turn. I find it, again, it was really amusing to me to read this and be like, oh yeah, the legs are just for show. Honestly, once they invented jumping jacks, they should have just taken the legs off of the mechs. Just take the legs off the mech and just let them land on a big skid pad and call it a day.
What I want to ask you, Michael, is assuming the legs are still on, what is the noise that the jumping jacker makes when he jumps and lands? Not the pilot, the machine.
Okay, when they're landing and with the legs.
Yeah.
Probably like a... as the, like all the gyros. There's probably like lots of whining of the gyros, like a...
Okay. I was wondering if you're going to go with that or if you're going to go with something more like boing, like a spring effect, like a cartooning.
I can't help myself. Like, no matter how goofy we talk about, I'm always visualizing the coolest robots I have ever seen. So for me, even if we're joking about legs existing purely as a suspension system, when that like spider lands after sailing 200 meters through the air, it's gonna the legs will compress, the hydraulics will squee, the servos will whine. It's gonna be cool no matter what. The big thump in the dust cloud as it lands.
Awesome.
I can't help it. It's too cool.
Too cool for school, baby. Stay in school, kids.
All right, what's your number 4?
All right. Once again, the BattleMech manual. We have, under the pulse laser, hey, who broke my large pulse laser's tar comp interface? And to me, this is so playful because it speaks to the frustrations of players when you're playing someone who stacks a large pulse laser with a targeting computer to get a -3 modifier on their attacks. We know it's super powerful. We know it's super good. So this is something that I don't imagine this in the universe, like a MechWarrior sitting there and someone breaking into his facility and damaging his interface. I instead imagine a player at the table. One person walks away, takes a pencil, scratches it out or something like that. No, you're not going to play with this, buddy. No -3 today.
That's funny. I didn't even like put that together as the idea. But you're right, that is fun. Sort of, again, splits the difference between like what you as the pilot at the table would be saying. Yeah, guys, we house ruled that you can't stack those. What? But this is the best mech. Oh, geez, who broke my tar comp?
Exactly. All right, shoot. We are in the big leagues now, baby. Top 3.
We finished the top 2 underneath the top 3. Now it's time for the top 3 above the top 2 below the top 3.
Below the top set. I don't know. You just went above my head. All right. Your number 3.
For me, it's the targeting computer from the BattleMech manual. All I'm saying is that it stops being just a computer when you've added 4 tons of servos and Waldos. And I like this one because, like, that's a really big thing. Like, even, I know the BattleTech universe has, like, bulky systems and the numbers and sizes don't exactly make sense. As Tex pointed out, maybe they're using different units. But however you slice it, 4 tons is a lot of stuff. And if this is, in fact, purely a computer, that's obviously absurd. So, it's not just a computer. It's also like, control servos and advanced gyro units attached to all of your weapons and stuff. It's a whole package. It's not just the TARCOM.
That's fun. I didn't think about the weight element of it, and you're right. That is actually very fun to visualize. It's like every MechWarrior sitting in a server room.
Yeah, he's got friggin' deep blue and sitting underneath him, calculating trajectories.
Now, what I want to know is, does cloud computing exist in the BattleTech universe for targeting computers? I guess that would be the C3 networks, sort of. That's as cloudy as it gets.
A very tiny cloud.
A very tiny cloud. My third is found in campaign operations. It's the hopper. That's right, you clanner scum. Still standing! That all you got? This is for the ability that if your leg gets blown off, you have the chance not to automatically fall. And first, this ability, I've gotten this ability, used to play with the pilot cards for a specific mech. And whenever I get the Vapor Eagle, one of its abilities is hopper, and I'd take it. And this is like one of those abilities that will very rarely come about. And even when it does come about, it's not that useful because it's still a very hard roll. You're still more than likely to fall. But I just like the concept of, this Monty Python-esque Black Knight, merely a flesh wound moment. The planners blasted off this guy's leg and he's standing there like it's nothing. And you can imagine that would be very frustrating for the opposing clanner.
What do you think the clanner's, response to that call would be?
Oh man, it depends on the clan. Depends on the clan. Some clans would be, offended. Other clans would be impressed.
How about your favorite, Steel Viper?
Steel Viper. I think Steel Viper would be impressed, and they would simply respond with something like, "That is not all I got," and then come and knock the opponent over, and then acknowledge them as a worthy opponent after battle. That's, of course, if it's one of the honorable Steel Vipers, which most were, I think. Not Brett Andrews. Brett Andrews would just have a temper tantrum and run up, bear hug, and put his mech on self-destruct and eject or something ridiculous like that. He's crazy. But the other Steel Vipers...
Death before dishonor.
Yeah. Yo, what? They've dishonored me! Self-destruct sequence activated. Cool. Number 2. Getting hyped.
So this one, I don't know how good this one actually is, but it's always stuck with me for some reason. Even it stuck with me since my first read of the BattleMech manual. Again, for a weapon I have never even seen installed on a mech or vehicle. It's the Silver Bullet Gauze Rifle with nothing says get out of my airspace like hypersonic buckshot. And it's not funny, it's nothing too special. It feels cool to me. And sort of as I mentioned, I like to visualize the coolness of the setting and these machines and the fight that's happening. And it doesn't always make sense, but the tech is cool, and I like to imagine it in operation. And I like the idea of a hypersonic gauze canister shot to annihilate aircraft is cool. I like it. I like to think about it. I like weapons like that.
Yeah, that's neat. And terrifying, right? Totally terrifying.
So that one just captures the coolness of the universe. It's easy, when you're rolling a lot of dice over and over again, then the weapons sort of just become numbers. But to think about the weapons shooting and shredding aircraft or a massive slug or a laser, melting off the armor on a mech. I like that. And this sort of captures that. So I like it.
Very, very cool. Very cool.
And your number 2, Mr. Nathan.
Back to the BattleMech manual. Artemis 5 fire control system. Why don't clan missile launchers just come standard with this? Yes, because why don't they just come standard with this? As a clan player, I feel like we need this. You Inner Sphere people have too many advantages. You do melee stuff. Oh, it's just messy. We need another bonus on our missile launchers to even make them more superior. This is another example of something that is said at the table that I can really resonate with. This is not, something that is said by the Inner Sphere in the universe. This is a player at the table being like, my clan mech clearly is underpowered, which is sort of a fun, ridiculous statement to make. So I love this because you can imagine someone saying it and then everyone on the table jumping on it. Are you kidding me? Oh my God.
Yeah, that's a fun one. I could 100% imagine saying that. And it's not like it's a hole in the lore. You can easily come up with explanations for why they don't. I'm sure they have, but still, one day you're gonna be at the table just having a bad time with your rolls. You're gonna be like, gosh, why don't they just we got the advanced clan technology. Why don't
we just win?
Why don't we just win? Why is everything so bad in this universe? Why is all the technology so crap?
Why has the Inner Sphere just not let us take over Terra? Because we know it's best. We came back to save them, and they just fight us like it's ridiculous. They should just let us win. We should just have auto-kill weapons. We're the best. Exactly. That's how I feel. There you go. Document it. Lock and load. Commit to the cause of the clanner. Sure, there's problems. Eugenics, I guess Tex made a good point. But come on. Super giant biceps? Who doesn't want those? All right. Number 1. Ooh.
Top 1.
If we don't have one on the list that's the same, I'm going to be personally offended. So this better be one that I've already said, or one I'm about to say, Michael, or I'm going to have a little hissy fit.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it might be. Okay, so this is just the top little flavor bit. I think it's on page 1 of the BattleMech manual, and then again a few pages in. Sort of, it's supposedly from a promotional pamphlet from Defiance Industries in 30-07. The modern BattleMech is the end result of more than 3,000 years of battlefield technology development, combining awesome destructive power and unparalleled maneuverability. The BattleMech is perhaps the most complex machine ever produced. The undisputed master of 31st century warfare, the BattleMech seems destined to reign supreme for centuries to come. I just like it because it's one of the first chunks that you see when you're getting into the book. Nathan, you and I were chatting a bit about how it's pretty thin. The BattleMech manual is quite efficient. There's not a lot of flavor text in there. It doesn't have the usual little story intermissions that a lot of rulebooks do. But that's it's just a punchy enough little section at the top to get you hooked on what's cool about the universe. It sets the ground rules for how things work. Like it or not, probably you'll like it because you're reading the BattleMech manual. But mechs dominate. They're the best thing ever. Everyone knows it, and everyone looks up for it. And I just think it really captures the spirit of BattleTech as it exists today.
Very cool. But I am having a hissy fit because it is not the same thing I chose, and we've not had 1 out of 10 matching.
All right, what's your top one? Well, we need to head to head these number ones.
I want to see if you can guess it. I know this is crazy. Is there something that I haven't said, or something that when you were looking at the book you thought that I would say?
Is it one of the flamer descriptions?
It is not, but that would have been a good option. Okay, once I say it, you're going to understand 100%. From campaign operations, Street Fighter. Hi-ya!
I read that one and I thought of you. But I was like, there's nothing there. It's just onomatopoeia.
Hi-ya! It's a simple and good. And one of the reasons I really love this so much is that, so as a seasoned martial artist and fighter myself, in real life, one thing I love about BattleTech is the old books specifically have so much what I'll call bullshito. Like, this was the time when we were growing up. You know, there wasn't the internet. There wasn't ways to find out what actually works in combat and what doesn't work in combat. Instead, we had Black Belt Magazine. And you look at these ninja masters and all these techniques and, you know, read it and like, oh, that's cool. That's cool. That's a cool theory. That's a cool idea. And you can really see that in BattleTech, the old fiction, that sort of form of martial arts was really, really built in because that was the time. And it is totally the whole hi-ya attitude. I love it. It's simple. It's good. It's ridiculous. It just is good old BattleTech fun. It captures so many things that BattleTech is to me. Cheesy, cool, fun, exciting, has personality, and it just is so short and sweet, which I guess isn't what BattleTech's about. It's the most concise representation of BattleTech I can represent. Hi-ya!
I like that we both picked something that, like, you know, in this one little chunk, it captured so much of what BattleTech is to us and so much of what it feels like. And I chose a 50-word paragraph of prose, and you chose one battle shout.
Yeah, well, you know, we also have different capabilities and capacities we've learned playing with each other. I need it short and sweet, Michael. You have a more breadth of retention, perhaps. Let's use that word. To be kind to myself.
Really makes you think.
Really makes you think. Does it make me think, though? Okay, I've one that I didn't put on my list because I think it's the most blatant sexual reference there is in the flavor text. But I don't know if it's just because I'm a pervert. It's either I'm a pervert or there is some innuendo going on here.
All right, I will judge.
All right, perfect. I'm going to reference it, and I'm not going to explain what I think the innuendo is because this is a family-friendly podcast. But just going to say, you know, I feel like, this isn't in my list. It's just there. It's something I noted. In the BattleMech manual, the LBX autocannon. Nothing says lovin' like a face full of mech scale buckshot.
Sexuality 0. LBXs are awesome.
What? I guess I'm a pervert. And on that note, let's go to the next segment.
This is Professor Michael, back with more of The Sphere We Live In. One of the more unusual Nero helmet feedback interactions affects a small number of pilots and their fire control systems. While the BattleMech's battle computer handles weapon trajectory calculations and fires at targets designated with a trigger pull, some pilots demonstrate unusually high accuracy at ranges where the computer's predictive envelope has already degraded to low probability shots. These range masters allow their mech battle computers to land shots at extreme ranges, but see corresponding drops in accuracy at close ranges. Research is ongoing into the exact nature of this phenomenon. Now you know about the sphere we live in.
Tertiary objective. Battlefield Outcome Report segment. Initiating.
With over 4 hours of intense mech-on-mech combat, the Solaris VII X Games Explosive Challenger All-of-It Collection will knock your cooling vest off! Narrated by the charismatic Nathaniel Smithson, relive classic Solaris VII tournament moments like the falling of Ghost by Bullet Taker in the treacherous Hartford Gardens.
Despite the mines and traps, he's been cut off! Oh! And a boot through the torso!
The death of Ha'am at the Boats of Fiddler in the decrepit scrapyard.
And if both fall down hard to the ground, who will rise victorious?
And the epic finale in the one and only Steiner Stadium.
The crowd is pounding each mech with volleys of SRMs. There is no escape.
This and more. Purchase the entire collection now for a limited time. Only 3 low payments of 99 C-bills. Remember, MechWarriors, act fast, stay alive. Act slow, become dead. Dial that number on your screen now.
Well, what happened? At a recently played Solaris VII tournament utilizing the special Solaris VII map pack rules, it was madness. So many crazy things happened across these games. But let's look at 3 highlights. A cudgel with TSM kicking the engine out of a werewolf, a pilot making it to the finals without a functional mech, and the general madness found in the Steiner Stadium. So, how did it happen? First, let's look at the Cudgel Massacre. The Cudgel was built with triple strength myomer, or TSM for short. If you haven't encountered TSM yet, it essentially changes the performance of your mech when you reach a certain heat threshold. Simply, it makes you faster, it makes you able to lift more, and it makes some melee attacks do double damage. On the Cudgel, this makes a single kick that would normally do 16 damage do 32 total damage instead. Keep in mind, this is to a single hit location as well. This mech used this kicking power to great effect in striking when an opportunity caused by elevation difference between opponents appeared. The Cudgel darted into range and kicked on the punch table. A single kick was enough to cleave right through the right torso, taking out the XL engine residing within. And to make matters worse, if the Cudgel had missed the werewolf, it had Melee Master, which would have allowed another kick. Now, to the next highlight. How did a pilot make it to finals without a functioning mech? Well, long story short, shortly after an onslaught landed the most amazing attack in BattleTech, a death from above, it and its opponent, a Sasquatch, stood face to face in hull down position, hex to hex, also known as kissing range. Both mechs unloaded at point blank range, with weapons of course, not kisses, with the Sasquatch tearing through the torso of the onslaught, destroying its engine. Well, the onslaught ripped into the Sasquatch's right arm and critical hit its Gauss rifle. The explosion caused 2 pilot hits on the Sasquatch, bringing it to 5 hits total. Of course, this was a challenging set of consciousness rolls to pass. The pilot passed the first and failed the second, which resulted in him automatically failing his PSR to remain standing, and the mech falling, killing the pilot. The end result, 1 mech destroyed and 1 pilot dead, leaving the surviving pilot scrambling to complete significant repairs on his onslaught before his next match. Lastly, one of the memorable moments in these games came from the stadium itself. A unique feature of the Solaris VII Steiner Stadium map is that mounted in the center ceiling are multiple turrets holding SRMs and narcs. The stadium has pylons and walls that raise and lower each round randomly. These obstacles can break line of sight from the turrets from certain angles, meaning you can occasionally hide from them. However, due to the overall size of the stadium and how line of sight works, unless you are right next to a wall, the SRM turrets can always get a lock on you. It is extremely intense, and from a spectator perspective, was a highlight of the tournament to watch. Overall, this mini Solaris VII tournament had so many twists, turns, and epic moments, it's hard to keep track. If you haven't had a chance to play on these maps yet with the Catalyst official rules found in the Solaris VII sourcebook, I extremely recommend it.
This is Professor Michael for Your Sphere Today. While Luthien Armorworks has been widely credited with designing the first fusion supercharger for mech applications, a lawsuit filed by private citizen T. Barton alleges that he had the original idea and had built a forced induction system for the Hunchback he maintained in the 3080s while serving in the Lyran Commonwealth Armed Forces. Affidavits from a fellow technician describe him as, quote, blackout drunk and on a mission to break something. The lawsuit is not expected to progress beyond initial hearings, but does have the backing of several companies currently licensing supercharger designs from Luthien. Now on to more of Your Sphere Today.
Secondary objective, rule check discovery segment. Initiating.
Welcome back, everyone, to our Rule Check Discovery segment. Today we're looking at 2 rule mistakes, one that we've made at the table, and one that our Loremaster Retro Lazer has made at theirs. Both of these rule mistakes, in many ways, have made it much harder to kill units. First, let's get into Retro Lazers, because this is a wacky bungle. I've never heard of it before. I can imagine how it can come to fruition 100% now that he's explained it to me, but man, would this make the game a challenging experience to play. Michael, do you want to try to explain it?
Bungle, as Retro Lazer explained it, was essentially stacking all of your range modifiers on a given weapon attack phase. So basically, each one of your weapons that would provide a +0 or a +2 or a +4 range modifier would apply that modifier to all weapons firing that turn. Therefore, you'd end up with, like, if you're firing a lot of weapons, especially at any range band outside short, you're going to be getting massive target numbers and basically make it impossible to hit anything. I don't know, there's a whole ton of things. This would, like, completely change your strategy for how you're going to, like, handle your weapons and how you want your mechs to be built. So I actually think it's a really interesting one. Like, I could almost see this being, like, I could see an alternate universe BattleTech where this was the rule.
Totally. And I think that, like you said, if this was the actual rule, you'd have different builds. And all of a sudden, the viability of different units would change. Like, all of a sudden, let's go through it. Gator, okay? So G, gunnery, that's always going to be the same.
Mm-hmm.
A, attacker movement modifier, that's always going to be the same.
Mm-hmm.
T, target modifier, that's going to be their defensive stuff and stuff like that. That could be different, right? No.
Target, I think, is always the same across different weapons.
You're right. Target can be the same. Or sorry, target would always be the same. Other and R, this is where it gets very different. R is obvious, it's range. So your different range bands,
it's obvious, Retro Lazer.
Not obvious in that way, obvious in how this would impact the game. So R, range, let's use a machine gun and a medium laser. I think the basic medium laser hits up to 3, right at its short range. The machine gun, 3 is its long range. So that means you have a 0 modifier for the medium laser, but a +4 for the machine gun. But that +4 would apply on the medium laser if you fired them together, right?
Yeah, so basically it forces you to be a lot more disciplined with which weapons are you actually going to fire. Because even just, I'll spray my machine gun in their direction, that throws off your aim for all your other weapons. You're placing your shots carefully.
Yes. Alpha Strike is no longer a thing unless you have one weapon. That being said, others where it gets really complicated, right? Because let's say you're indirect firing your missiles, you have a secondary target, you have a pulse weapon. Let's look at how this can make it easier. You have a large pulse laser and you have a PPC, and you're firing them at short range. The large pulse laser is going to give you a -2 also on the PPC by those rules. That's going to make an easier shot, so certain builds would be more effective. Targeting computer obviously would... Actually, targeting computer is interesting because technically it only impacts certain weapon types. So if it was blanket across the board, that would also change things, interestingly enough. Minimum range of other as well. So, you're at 5 range with an LRM. That's short range for PPC. You fire the PPC, you fire the LRM. That's going to give you +2 target modifier on your PPC. It's crazy. That's crazy. One thing that is interesting, you look at the sheets, all the Gator trackers out there, right? It's always a single line for Gator. So it's like you write the individual weapon bands, and like even our little sheet that we've made is the exact same. So you can really understand how people will be like, okay, what am I to hit? And even on the table, like he said, many times people will be like, okay, I'm aiding up to hit. They'll say that really quickly and in a simplistic fashion because they've already selected the weapons that they're doing that's giving them that number, right? But, to someone who's a new player that comes and hears this, they might think, oh, okay, there's a single target number.
Yeah, I'm thinking back to when I first started getting into BattleTech, and you were getting back into BattleTech, and that's where many of these bungles originate, I'll be honest. And I could totally imagine you have told you having told me this and me just being like, oh yeah, I guess that makes sense. What I'm saying is I could totally imagine you making this bungle, Nathan.
Yeah. I mean, I can imagine myself making any bungle, to be honest, except bungling by saying Steel Viper's bad. That's the only bungle I could not make. Yeah, no, this is really relatable and actually connected to the rule mistake we were making, which I think is sort of relevant. So in general, the retro laser bungle would make the game much harder to play, I think, in most situations. Specific builds, of course, would do better if they combine things with pulse lasers. But most builds, I think, are really going to suffer with this.
Well, it'll make it slower. It'll slow down the game a lot. But I think it would still work, which is probably why the bungle persisted, is the game fundamentally will still work. It's just that you're going to take a lot more rounds to plink people away or walk into short range, and, then you can actually alpha strike.
Yeah, except I think that mechs with less weapon systems would benefit more from the system because they inherently wouldn't have the handicap. I'm thinking like a pack hunter, a single PPC. This would never be relevant for them, and because it's never relevant for them, it doesn't impact them like it would impact other mechs. So I feel like you're right, it's playable, and assuming everyone gets impacted equally, it would be not a unbalanced way to play the game from a fairness perspective. But I think there will be certain mechs that rise to the cream of the crop.
Get a load of Nathan over here lecturing me on balance.
It's not a lecture. It's a conversation. I would never lecture anyone in BattleTech. Please.
Anyways, take us on to the next rule mistake, which also would extend the battle time somewhat.
And this is a rule mistake that is as simple as just not reading the rules, looking at the character sheet and being like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And this is slots that are filled with endosteel or ferrofibrous, thinking that they can absorb critical hits and are not just re-rolled.
Yeah, this one, this is definitely one that I would make at first glance. If you hand me the sheet and I look at my critical hit slots, some of those slots say roll again, and some of those slots say endosteel. So those are different. I roll again if it hits roll again. I cross out endosteel if you hit endosteel.
Exactly.
It was just obvious.
It's obvious. And what does endosteel and ferrofibrous do? They make your mech tougher. It's a very intuitive mistake to make, but if you look in the book, it's very clear that it's a reroll.
BattleMech Manual, page 46. If a critical hit roll would apply damage to a slot for which any of the following apply, it is an inapplicable slot and the player rolls again. Number 3 in that list, the slot cannot take critical damage, such as endosteel, case, TSM, or ferrofibrous armor slots.
I didn't know case couldn't take...
Bonus bungle!
Case as well? Oh my god. That is crazy. I've learned something live in the episode. Case can't take critical hits as well. That's crazy. The funny thing about the ferrofibrous and endosteel is I actually really wonder why they decided to put it on the character sheets in the way they did in the slots. Because how that works is essentially putting that in your mech, frees up stuff in your mech, lets you add more weapons, gives you more armor capacity, stuff like that. I'm oversimplifying it. But basically, putting it in your mech allows you to make your mech better. So that's cool, and I understand representing that in some way, but I feel doing it in the actual slots. Although, when you design mechs, you actually do have to slot it in. So if you were in like MegaMech, for example, which is the only experience I have designing mechs, you actually have to drop it in the slots. Probably actually in MechWarrior 2. Actually, yeah. In the MechWarrior games as well, you have to drop them into the slots like the old MechWarrior 2 mercenaries.
Yeah, that's sort of one of the interesting things about building the mechs. And I think it's maybe a bit of just like legacy from really old rules, but when you're building it, you have sort of two different budgets that you have to deal with. One is the tonnage budget, where, you know, a particular frame has a particular tonnage, you can fill up to that tonnage, but you also have a limited number of slots. And certain things are really big. So, you know, there's a few components you can add which let you trade off between them. You spend more internal slots to free up tonnage. And I don't know enough about like BattleMech building theory to know how much that actually works as a balancing factor, but it's definitely there. So that's sort of why it ends up here, is because that little array of internal slots is pulling double duty. It's both for building the mech, in which case you need to mark off endosteel because you're paying a cost, but it's also what you actually use to play the game. And then, you know, technically you don't need endosteel on there when you're playing the game, but you need it there when you're building the mech.
And I imagine, you know, total common mistake that people make just when they're playing, when they pick the sheet up. Oh, yeah, it's a critical hit. Okay, it's steel, yeah? And I thought that was one of the big advantages of it because I didn't understand the mech building side. So I'm like, this is the advantage. It's taking up critical hit slots, so it makes me so much more resilient. And it does. It makes you ridiculously more resilient. But that's not the rule. And now we know with case 2. Or now I know with case 2. Crazy. But here's the thing, you know, I'm thinking about case and, you know, maybe I'm remembering it wrong, but I believe on sheets, sometimes it's not actually put in slots, but that might just be clan mechs, right? So it's built into all clan mechs. So maybe another way for confusion to pop into my head, that inconsistency.
Yeah. I guess it's sort of anything that doesn't have an obvious like consequence to it being shot. Those are all the things that can't take critical damage. Nothing soaks up a critical hit. If it's getting critical, something's breaking if you roll a critical.
Totally. And like through criticals, crit transfers and stuff like that as well. Like there's lots of, that's another mistake I've made, is thinking that if something was empty, it didn't transfer in. And I'm like, oh, hit me in the right and left torso, I'm invincible. And then finding out it does transfer, and I'm like, oh my God, I am weak.
The laser just keeps reflecting around your internals until it eventually hits something that can destroy.
Exactly. It's just bouncing around. It's a crazy visualization, but just don't visualize. Just don't think about it, guys. Just play the game, roll the dice. Yeah, just embrace the flavor text. Visualize that scene. Don't visualize the lasers bouncing around. It'll drive you crazy.
This is something, it wouldn't make the game unplayable or anything. That's why we kept doing it this way for so long, but it will make it longer, because one of the main ways to kill mechs is taking out important internal components, and this makes it really hard for some mechs.
Totally. Well, thank you for sharing that, Loremaster Retro Lazer. Your mistake is super, super interesting. I love to chat about it. I can see how people would make that, and our mistake as well. These are two bungles that you can just imagine how much they'd impact the game, how much they'd change the game, and how easily they could come about. Thank you for sharing. On to our next segment.
This is Professor Michael presenting The Sphere We Live In. While many Holovid viewers have enjoyed watching depictions of the dread pirate Gigantus on the silver holoscreen, the true story of the man behind this myth is often untold. Operating out of the Amtor system in the 2990s, Gigantus, or Jason, as his lancemates knew him, was responsible for dozens of attacks on convoys and house outposts, but was also well known for his acts of charity on his homeworld. Join us now as we explore the man behind the Green Banshee. This is the sphere we live in.
Tertiary objective. Stories of the Inner Sphere segment. Initiating.
Galatea City. Galatea. Galatean League. 31 July, 3151. We need work. We need work. We need work, thought Philip Osborne as he bumped the steel off his chest in time to the words, again and again letting frustration fuel his workout. Born and raised in Terra's ancient city of Barcelona, he had short dark hair and light brown skin that glistened from the sweat running from his left wrist down to his triceps. His silvery prosthetic right arm, however, reflected the workout room's fluorescent lighting. He was already bracing himself for another long day at the mercenary hiring hall. Hours spent trying to arrange meetings with agents just to be told they weren't interested in hiring him and his wife, Nevada. After slowly putting the bar back into place, he cleaned all the equipment and closed the door behind him before heading up the stairs toward his apartment. The owners and their two sons took up the entire second floor above the Highlander bar, and on the third floor were 6 apartments, one of which he was renting for the foreseeable future. Unfortunately, Philip growled under his breath. He stared up at the ceiling for a moment, calming himself down before jogging up the stairs. Hitting the third floor, he walked down to his apartment and quietly opened the door, trying not to wake his family. It was small, a 1-bedroom flat with, thankfully, a decently sized living room and both a well-equipped kitchen and a washer-dryer combo that was in almost constant use because of the kids. As usual, he needn't have bothered with stealth. Nevada was already in her usual chair, one fraternal twin on her breast, the other gurgling on her lap and batting at her brother's feet above her. She was of average height, had skin the color of stained oak, and dark hair she kept in the close-cropped style common among MechWarriors. Between the caloric demands of the twins, the almost endless maintenance her BattleMech required, and working in the bar downstairs, she'd lost almost all her pregnancy weight, something her physician was already concerned about. Philip walked over and kissed his wife on the forehead. Thought they'd still be asleep, he said as he stripped off his shirt and shorts. Balling them up, he spun on a heel and did a fadeaway overhand shot, the clothes landing perfectly on the washing machine. He'd hit a growth spurt in middle school and led his team to multiple championships before his growing suddenly stopped, leaving him a talented but average-sized guard in high school. But between basketball, baseball, and rugby, Philip could put a grenade just about anywhere he chose to throw it. A useful skill for an infantryman. At his wife's raised eyebrow, he added, "I'll throw in a load after I shower. I'm not leaving them for you." "I know," she said, then yawned. "Oh, I'm just wiped, and I really appreciate you picking up a lot of the slack, even if I forget to tell you." She chuckled lightly. "Amnesia is no joke. I'll probably have forgotten this entire conversation by the time you get out of the shower." He looked at her, and then at his own body. Even though the scars from his top surgery and hysterectomy were invisible, after so many years, he knew where they were. He frowned, slightly. "Sometimes when I see how exhausted you are, I wish I'd delayed. Wish I'd held off until I met you." "Stop." Her gentle tone switched to one of command, an officer of the Republic Armed Forces that would brook no disagreement. "You had to be true to yourself then, and I will not listen to you beat yourself up about it now." She smiled slightly to take the edge off, but her tone was still flat and serious as she asked, check, or hold, Sergeant. He smiled slightly, walked forward, and leaned over to give her a kiss. Yes, ma'am. Sorry to get too deep into my feelings, ma'am. She laughed. Getting moody on me when I can't have coffee is a risky choice, love, she replied. Keep your head in the game, okay? His jaw set. Absolutely. He leaned in for another kiss, and her nose crinkled. Good. Remember, I love you for who you are, but you reek. Hit the showers, Sergeant. Philip smiled and threw a salute as he headed off. Yes, ma'am. 11 hours later, Nevada was behind the bar as he entered, and she could tell by his body language it had been another unsuccessful day job hunting. She pulled him a locally brewed Pilsner, glancing to her right. Put this one against me, Christos, she said, and the large man waved it off as he wiped down a pitcher. Christos Makrides was a large man, a native Galatian who'd inherited the bar from his father and grandfather before him. Named the Highlander Bar, it had the front faceplate of the namesake BattleMech mounted on the side wall of the tavern, a large mirror where the cockpit widescreen would be, and drinks arrayed in front of it. Stretching around it was a solid wooden bar polished and gleaming. By a well-known rule, anyone damaging the bar would get charged for repairs. Anyone deliberately defacing the wood would get defaced in turn by the bouncers. There was a well-lit stage over a small dance floor, sometimes with dancers, sometimes live music, but otherwise, a tall, skinny man of Korean descent referring to himself as Wolfman kept the tunes lively from a corner DJ booth. The ceiling was red velvet. The room was lit so customers could see each other and have a good time, but dark enough for canoodling in the corners. And the walls and columns were all a deep slate green, covered in chalk signatures. From the bar, or floating around on tables, were sticks of chalk, and customers could sign their names, write messages, draw their unit icons. About every 5 years or so, Christos would wipe the slates clean, except for a few small spots he'd circled with a "Do Not Erase" tag. Lovers, friends, notes to missing comrades. They covered every square centimeter around the tavern, and it was that graffiti, that linkage to units and friends gone by, that made the Highlander Bar a staple among the I'm-between-units strata of unemployed mercenaries. Mercs under contract would be too busy trying to get underway to socialize at the Highlander, and wouldn't want to flaunt their good fortune anyways, lest Lady Luck decide to make an example of them. The truly desperate and broke mercenaries, the ones a few meals away from piracy, kept to the dives and slum bars at the outskirts of town, or simply drank the pain away wherever they stayed. The Highlander, though, was patronized by mercs in transition, ones who found themselves unemployed for one reason or another, but had enough socked away and a solid enough reputation that regaining employment wasn't so much an issue of if, but when. Watching Philip approach, Nevada wondered how much longer this could go on. She gave him a quick kiss when he sat down at the left side of the bar, his right arm against the wall. The opposite side was one of the most popular seats in the bar, many mercs unable to relax without watching the door. Philip wasn't as paranoid as some. He just preferred to see the door. Being left-handed, he was able to grab the stool less straddled. He ordered a cold-cut sandwich, and Christos smiled and said, "Go take a break with him at a table. It's quiet now." He nodded at the empty room for emphasis. She smiled and thanked him. It was just after dinner time, and their normal rush didn't come in until later, staying until after 1 on weekdays and 3 on weekends. After Christos's wife, Phoebe, had tripped down the basement stairs on her way to swap out kegs, she'd offered to babysit the twins in exchange for Nevada subbing for her behind the bar. Nevada had agreed, slipping upstairs throughout the night as necessary for feedings or in case of emergencies. and she was thankful of the extra cash bartending was bringing in to counter the otherwise constant drain on their savings. Philip followed her to a corner table. Her husband, as usual, was quietly reading the chalk signatures while sipping the beer. "How bad was it today?" she asked as they sat next to each other. "Same as usual," he replied with a shrug, then looked at his right hand, the bar lights reflecting off his metallic prosthetic. He made a fist, the thin myomer musculature silent as he clenched, unclenched, clenched, then relaxed it as he took a sip of beer from the mug in his left hand. "I'm just a sergeant from a no-name RAF company who lost an arm to the Falcons while they wiped his unit from existence." She frowned at his despair. "You know, just surviving Mad Malvina is a miracle in itself." "I know that, and you know that, but all the recruiters on this rock?" He sighed deep. They don't care." "Why not?" Came an energetic voice, and the Osborns looked up. Carter McRita's youngest son of the owner was bringing their sandwiches. 18, skinny, and often naive about anything not involving bartending, he held 2 plates with their food. "If you don't mind me asking." Nevada watched Philip use his foot to slide the chair opposite from him out, and Carter sat while they took bites. "Now that the Republic of the Sphere is gone, this world is swarming with ex-RAF soldiers, all of us looking for work with any unit that'll sign us on. They have their pick of troops. Why should they choose me? My unit lost, I got hurt, we didn't matter. It's not a resume that rises to the top." Carter looked sad. "No one wants to hire you or Nevada? I mean, she is a BattleMech. That has to be worth something." Nevada shook her head. "You forget. My Paladin's an ultra-rare, hard-to-maintain heavy. It's an outsized burden on small technical staffs. More than that, we have twins. That's 2 dependents to add to the insurance. 2 dependents who can't chip in with maintenance. 2 more dependents to guard while we're on mission. Dependents who need doctor's visits and checkups and a million little administrative issues that isn't really the unit's problem. But, then again, why hire me when they can get some young mech jockey half my age with a common ride and no kids?" But you're experienced." She leaned forward. "I am, and I expect to get paid like it too. Phil, did any of the units offer anything worth my time?" Her husband shook his head. "No one offered you a captain's slot, and the ones that offered a lieutenant position offered rock-bottom salary for it." Carter shook his head. "But that's not fair." Nevada took a big bite of her sandwich, glanced over to the bar to make sure Christos was okay. He nodded at her, then turned to help the only customer sitting at the bar, then glanced at the door. She smiled when she saw who walked in. "If you don't believe me, just ask the Dvorskys. They're just as skilled as I am, but they're all working for your dad just to make ends meet." Carter spun around. It was an open secret he was madly in love with Emily Dvorsky, the youngest of the 3 siblings. In the lead was Wynn, his cybernetic right eye glowing a gentle red. He helped as a bouncer, so he was in work pants and a t-shirt. His entire prosthetic right arm and pectoral muscles reflecting the bar's light. He was 43 and bald, olive-skinned, and worked out constantly to maintain the all-around athletic build of a career soldier. Behind him was Hester, 5 years older than him and the eldest of the Dvorsky siblings. She was in khakis and a button-down shirt, leading Nevada to believe she'd probably had interviews today as well. Tall, just as athletic as her brother, with shoulder-length salt and pepper hair. She'd changed into a midriff-bearing tank top and short shorts before her shift. Both of Hester's legs were prosthetic, and she would sashay around the tables on the shapely metallic limbs. In the rear, 2 decades younger than her siblings at 24, was Emily, whom Hester had once jokingly called their mum's favorite surprise. Emily, like her siblings, had been injured in the ruthless fighting between her home, the magistracy of Canopus, and their neighbors in the Marian hegemony. She was missing her entire left arm and her right leg from just above the knee. But unlike her siblings, Her limbs were a milky mother of pearl that seemed to change colors with every step she took. She was slim, with long, bouncy hair she dyed red, and her every movement attracted attention. Wynn fist-bumped Philip and Carter, hugged Nevada, snatched another chair from a neighboring table, and straddled it backward while yelling at Emily to pull them a pitcher. Something Christos had already started the moment they'd walked in. Hester rustled Carter's hair like a kid brother, gave a peck on each cheek to Nevada. The three siblings tended to show their affection with physical touch, and it had taken Nevada a few days to get used to it, before Hester walked around the table to take the last open seat. Emily, carrying a pitcher of beer and glasses, sat down in Nevada's lap, threw her heels onto Carter's thigh, pulling an instant blush from the teen, and kissed her on the cheek. "Hi, sexy, miss me? What you talking about?" Philip grabbed the pitcher, topping off his glass and then pouring for Wynn. "Esther, your sister's hitting on my wife again." "Run away with me, my darling." Emily overdramatized, throwing her flesh and blood arm around Nevada's shoulders and staring into her eyes. "Let's leave this ill-begotten world and live in sin on the distant frontier." "Tempting." Nevada replied, just as theatrically, stretching out the word before breaking into laughter. The table joined in as Philip continued to fill glasses. Emily stole a French fry from Nevada's plate. "Seriously, what were you talking about? It looked kinda intense." Nevada's face fell. "How hard it is to find a spot in a Merc unit right now, between the twins and Philip's prosthetic." The table got quiet, and Emily splayed out her prosthetic hand over the table, studying her almost translucent fingers, moving her hand back and forth to pick up the different colored spotlights from around the stage. "Yeah, it's been hard for us too." "But why?" Carter said. "It's not your fault you guys got injured. You were doing your jobs." Emily reached over, stole Philip's glass, ignoring his "I poured you one" protest, and took a deep swig. "Carter, Emily looked away for a second, took another deep drink before putting it back down in front of Philip. "I never told you how I got hurt. We were attacking a Calliope the hegemony probably stole from us. And our major wanted it back, and so our battle armor platoon," she waved a hand to include Hester, "went after it while Wynn's unit distracted it." "My commander was an idiot," Wynn chimed in, his red eye burning like pooled lava. "As dense as this table," he said, smacking it with his artificial hand for emphasis. "She saw the Calliope as just another mech, but they're designed to kill infantry. I got lucky, just got some shrapnel. Most of the platoon ate plasma." Nevada shuddered, and he paused and turned toward her. "Sorry, Nevs," he said sincerely. "I know you MechWarriors hate fire." "It's a horrible way to die," Nevada replied, and Emily shifted on her lap slightly as she also nodded in agreement. He nodded back, his human eye distant and unfocused as he raised his glass. Yes, it is," he quietly agreed. Emily looked at her brother for a second, and then turned back to Carter to continue. "While they were buying time with their lives, we snuck through the trees and flanked the mech. When we finally jumped at him, they caught me." Emily used her left hand to demonstrate for emphasis, snapping her fingers over the table. "They snatched me out of the air and squeezed. I could feel my own armor ripping me apart. I just remember screaming before the meds kicked in, and they threw me off to the side to step on Hester." Nevada and the rest of the table slowly looked at Hester. "Right across both thighs," Hester said coldly, little emotion in her voice. "Instant amputation. I don't even remember it. I passed right out, but the pressure on the armor also shattered both of my hips. Thankfully, my organs were only bruised, but my entire pelvis is polymer. Sometimes I still wake up in a cold sweat from that damn battle," Emily said. "We're damaged goods, a lot of us. But this is what we do. We're not bartenders, though I'll love your dad forever for giving us some temp work and a lot of free beer. We're soldiers, but on a world busting open at the seams with fit and healthy crunchies. Why should a unit take a chance on us?" "Crunchies?" Carter asked. Nevada chuckled. "A slang term for infantry. It's the noise they make when a BattleMech steps on them. No offense, Hess," she said, and chuckled again when Carter blanched. Hester chuckled mirthlessly into her beer. "If I was offended, Emily would just say it twice as often." Emily smiled. "I would. I'm evil that way." The table, save Carter, chuckled, the mood lightening slightly. The young man was still glum and shook his head. "It's still not fair." "Life usually ain't, kid," Philip agreed, finishing off his beer. "It usually ain't." The next evening, Philip was sitting at the bar next to Wynn when she noticed a pair of tough guys making their way toward them through the crowd. It was after dinner, but before the night rush, so the smaller man in a cheap suit and his better-dressed muscle had to weave around a few couples to get to them. Philip nudged Wynn with his elbow, and the large man turned around, still holding his beer. "You the Dvorsky brother?" the short one asked. Wynn's real eye narrowed, and out of sight of the two men, Philip slowly dropped his hand toward a knife he had tucked in the small of his back. "Depends on who's asking," answered Wynn. The smaller man put up his hands. "Hey, we're all friends here. Your sister missed her link up with me, but I figured you might be good for it." "Good for what?" At this point, Hester had slipped through the crowd to be on the man's right elbow, and the bodyguard shifted up but didn't stop her. The smaller man pulled out a small envelope and passed it to Wynn, who opened it, looked inside, then passed it to Hester. Philip watched the situation carefully as she looked inside, and only relaxed when he saw her nod at the man. "We're good for it. Wynn, please settle up Emily," she said as the muscle and Wynn got together to pass some bills back and forth. She asked, "Where's Em, though?" "Don't know. I told her to meet me at McKenny's pub, and she never showed. But she did me a solid a while back, so I figured I could swing by here and deliver it to you." Esther quirked an eyebrow. "A solid?" He smiled slightly. "She introduced me to my girl." Esther looked at the big man, who looked away for a second and then quietly said, "My kid needed braces, and Em said she knew a guy. The doc's great." Esther smiled. "Yeah, that's our Emily. She never showed at the pub?" Carter interrupted from behind the bar. "Wait, McKenny's pub?" He looked at Hester. "When she left, she said she was heading to McKenny's tavern. A lot of off-worlders mix them up." The smaller man narrowed his eyes. "That's Vori territory," he said, naming the organized crime group that ran much of the underworld along the League Confederation border, and even into Near Republic and Alliance space. "If she went over there looking for me, she could be in trouble. If they knew she was looking for black market pheromone implant refills, she could be in real trouble." He glanced at the big guy, then turned back to Hester. "Your kid's sister's good people, and I don't know many of them. Let me make a few calls." When Emily didn't return within the next few hours, Hester and Wynn grew anxious. The group, including Jamal, the smaller man, migrated to the corner table. He was constantly stepping outside to meet with contacts, while the bigger man, Ahmed, sat at the table with the two Dvorskys, all three nursing sodas. Philip switched to soda as well, and Nevada was checking for updates every time she could slip away from the bar. Couples danced and partied, and the group got more and more solemn until finally Jamal came to the table with a deep frown on his face. Philip put his glass down and waved at Nevada for her to join them. "Well?" Esther quietly asked. "She got snatched, but I know who did it and where they are." Wynn's artificial hand smashed the glass he was holding into shards, and Hester put a hand on his arm to calm him as heads turned at neighboring tables. Philip and Nevada on her way over, convinced them everything was okay. "Please, tell us everything," Hester asked just loud enough to be heard over the music. Nevada took a seat next to Hester, putting her hand on the older woman's shoulder. Hester smiled at the gesture, and then the four focused on Jamal as he sat and said, "She's been snatched by the Vori, working for someone recruiting for the Marian Legion." Wynn hissed, and Hester growled. Nevada frowned. "The hegemony. Why?" Jamal shrugged. "It has to do with what she was shopping for. Those recharge cells and the catalyst agents for her pheromone implant. When she showed up in League territory, the regulars were willing to ignore her. But apparently, a hegemony recruiter was down there. When he found out what she was waiting around for, he called for backup and grabbed her when she left."
I still don't understand why.
Wynn said. Jamal paused, taking a deep breath and looking at Wynn and Hester before going on. At Hester's nod, he said, "I'm getting this second and third hand, but as I understand it, the recruiter was injured during an Ebon Magistrate raid a few years ago. The Canopian sleeper agent used a pheromone implant on him, convincing him to pass over the credentials she needed to get into his facility." He shrugged. "That's the word I got anyways. They took Emily out to a safe house they've outside city limits too." His voice faltered for a second, remembering he was talking to Emily's family. "To work her over because of it." Wynn shook his head in disbelief.
That wasn't us. We were still in the Magistrate's training program then.
Hester nodded, her face still solemn. "But Erin was close to the agent, remember? They dated for a while. She'll die before she gives up her name." "Then she'll die painfully," Jamal said quietly. "It might take a couple hours, but I think I can put you in touch with the recruiter. Maybe I can convince them not to hurt her until you talk to them?" Wynn shook his head.
They won't stop. They're hegemony. They'll agree to a meetup and keep going anyway. We have to go get her.
Hester nodded. "There's only the two of you," Jamal noted.
3, said Philip.
4, added Nevada, "and I'll pull Muckton out of storage." 5, said Carter, who'd come up behind them. The entire table immediately responded in various forms of no in multiple languages.
No.
Nuh-uh. Carter crossed his arms in front of his chest. "She's my friend too, guys, and if you're all kitted up to kick indoors, who's going to get you there and stay with the truck? I'm a great driver. You need me." "Absolutely not," Hester said. "Carter, we all know how you feel about Em, but this isn't a job for civilians. I'm sorry, but Emily will kill us if we get you killed rescuing her." The table fell silent a moment before Ahmad said,
I'll drive. I owe Emily that much.
Hester stood. "Let's take this upstairs. We can keep planning while I swap legs." Just after 3 a.m., Nevada led the way through the darkness in Muckton, her 60-ton Paladin PAL 3 BattleMech. The heavy mech had been hand-built by innovative design concepts on Solaris VII almost a century prior. When the word of Blake invaded the world, her grandfather and the other IDC test pilots had escorted their families out of Solaris City, running alongside a convoy of civilian vehicles that carried their dependents out into the countryside into safety. He then fought alongside Jesse Watson, Jim Arnold, and a few other IDC MechWarriors against the word's occupation of Solaris. Once the word left, he immediately joined the Lyran Alliance armed forces, unable to rest until he'd helped throw the word off Terra. Accepting the Republic's offer to resettle on Terra, he also accepted a commission in the RAF, as it was the only way to keep his beloved Paladin during those early years of disarmament. It had passed down to Nevada's father and then to her. However, unlike when her grandfather and father piloted it, she no longer had the full backing of a Solaris company or a state army to help with the maintenance burden. The Paladin was kept upright by an extra light gyro powered by an outsized extra light engine and wrapped difficult-to-find light ferrofibrous armor around an incredibly dense reinforced chassis. It was a design IDC painstakingly engineered to eke every possible gram of lethality and survivability out of the weight available. But the back-end maintenance chores were oppressive. Renting base space, finding the right tools to rent, hunting down spare parts, and then often having to customize them to fit the all but extinct frame was both physically and mentally exhausting, especially knowing it was a burden no mercenary unit generally wanted to shoulder. Between the Paladin's upkeep and hospital bills from having the twins, Nevada knew she'd soon have to make a choice on keeping Muckton or swapping it for something far less expensive. But it wasn't a decision point she was at yet. She shook her head to clear her thoughts. Focus, she reprimanded herself. Jamal told us they employ a pair of MechWarriors, but his contact didn't know the models. She grimaced. I've gone into battle with less information, but I still don't like it. When Outreach had served as a central hub for legitimate mercenary employment for a few decades, Galatea had dipped from being the mercenary star to the other one. Recruiters with sketchy reputations, offering contracts of questionable morality and legality, weren't welcome on Outreach. So, they remained behind as the reputable employers departed. Many smaller units as well soon realized the comparatively clean and prosperous streets of Outreach were no place for warriors that simply wanted paychecks and weren't incredibly choosy on who they had to kill to earn them. Galatea was soon overwhelmed with criminals, pirates, thugs, and those that wanted to hire them. It got so bad during the FedCom Civil War that battles between rival mercenary units raged unchecked across the world, requiring an entire mercenary regiment to come in under contract and clean up the situation. Not long after, the word of Blake occupied Galatea during the Jihad, leaving over 80% of the population homeless on their own world. It took the Republic decades of pumping capital into the planet to get it rebuilt. And though it once again served the Inner Sphere as the center of mercenary employment, it was now a hybrid of the two versions that came before. The legitimate businesses and recruiters located in Galatea City, and the less reputable ones scattered across the world in dark bars, seedy hotels, and other shady locals far from the oversight of the Mercenary Review and Bonding Commission. Far to the north, and just outside Galaport, were the Hangdorf Proving Grounds, the only certified training facility for units to rent and show off their skills for legitimate employment. Unofficially, just as it was during the Dark Decades, that left the rest of the world as unofficial training grounds, though an unwritten rule was to keep any so-called live fire exercises outside of populated areas, lest it draw official notice. It was through one of those unofficial but often used tracts of barren wastes, Nevada led the delivery van containing her husband and their friends. An hour outside of Galatea City lay a small riverside town that catered to whitewater rafters due to a particularly treacherous stretch of river nearby. The Vori apparently used the river as a smuggling conduit, sending illicit goods downstream on small watercraft to dock at their front business north of the rapids, a rafting company just outside town. While the Vori did run a legitimate business taking tourists downstream, it was solely to provide a cover for their massive warehouse dedicated to raft maintenance. Jamal's information told them Emily had been taken to the small administration building adjacent to the warehouse, where the mob kept rafts and canoes up front and drugs in the back. He'd also learned they kept a pair of MechWarriors on the payroll, ostensibly to protect the town from criminal elements. But really, to ensure other criminal organizations thought twice about stealing their illicit goods. Nevada and her friends didn't care about anything in the warehouse, but a pair of BattleMechs could bring their rescue mission to a quick end. The van entered town, Nevada obeying the unwritten rules and cutting the corner across country to meet them outside city limits on the town's north side. With her back in the lead, about 5 minutes later and a kilometer shy of the property, her BattleMech sensors pinged for attention. She clicked open her microphone.
I've got 2 BattleMechs powering up. Looks like they're just watching us for now, but the good money says once you make that left toward the river, they'll pop out of hiding. Ahmed, you need to punch it once you make the turn. I'll cover you. Understood,
came Philip's solid voice.
Good luck, honey.
He said a minute later, as the van turned and accelerated, its headlights cutting deep into the Galatian night and leaving no illusions as to its destination. The 2 BattleMechs, still obscured a half-kilometer away behind hills and boulders, headed toward the van.
You too, babe,
she said, and clicked the microphone off. Swinging her targeting pip over the closest enemy, she felt her nerves calm and her focus sharpen. Philip needs more luck than I do, she thought. After 20 years of fighting wolves, falcons, and caplins, whatever scrubs these bastards manage to put on their payroll, Muckton and I can handle them. Once they made their turn, Philip confirmed the interior lights were off and then opened one of the rear doors, moving to the side to let wind out. As the asphalt streaked by underneath, wind swung out onto the rear of the second door, where an aluminum ladder leading to the roof was bolted on. Philip heard Wynn lock his artificial arm into place, ensuring he wouldn't let go. With a nod to the big man, Philip closed the door and went back to his seat just as they approached a small guard shack on the edge of the barbed wire fenced property. The guard held up a hand to block the glare from the headlights, as Wynn had said during planning. It was an old trick to make sure the guard couldn't see who was in the van until the last second. But the old trick stuck around across the centuries, because they worked. Pulling up right in front of the rolling gate, Ahmed rolled down his window and shouted at the guard,
"Let us in! There's a BattleMech back there!"
As if on cue, the distinct sounds of mech combat started in the distance. The guard, a surprisingly fit and alert man with the bearing of a fellow veteran, frowned at Ahmed and glanced over at Hester in the passenger seat. He shifted, trying to see who else was in the van.
"Who are you?" he demanded. "We never get deliveries this late."
He frowned again and was about to ask another question when he started, dropping a hand down to his holstered pistol. Before he could turn around, however, Wynn's steel fist clamped around his neck from behind and squeezed, crushing any noise he might have made before yanking him backward into the dark. 5 seconds later, Wynn stepped into the guard shack, hit the gate button, and sprinted for the back door of the van. "Go quick, but not too fast, Ahmed," reminded Philip. "As far as everyone inside is concerned, the guard cleared us. Let's keep pretending we're their friends right up to the door." The big man nodded as Hester, Wynn, and Philip conducted final checks, all 3 racking bolts and double-checking their gear. Philip glanced at Ahmed. "Keep the engine running. No telling how hot our evac might be." The big bruiser grunted in agreement, and with a final turn of the wheel, took them around the well-lit tourist entrance into the employee entrance in the rear. A hard brake on gravel, and they came to a stop. Philip threw open the rear doors, Wynn aiming a combat shotgun at the entrance, while up front Hester jumped out and swung the barrel of her light machine gun toward the roof.
"Good luck, guys,"
Ahmed said as he killed the lights, the 3 veterans running to the door with their weapons at the ready. They quickly stacked up, and with a tap on Wynn's shoulder, the big man blew the lock off the door with his Morgan storm sweep, the shotgun's blast echoing off the building in the darkness. Nevada studied the map on a secondary monitor as she closed the distance. The town was about 3 kilometers south, and a kilometer to her left was the river, warehouse, and the office her husband was heading to. Half a kilometer ahead of her, behind a low ridge that ran from the map all the way back to the river, were the emissions indicative of BattleMech's type still unknown. She pushed her throttle open with her left hand, the Paladin hitting its top speed of 97 kilometers within seconds. Acceleration also sent a wave of heat into the cockpit. Everything a BattleMech did generated heat, and XXL engines were well known to run even hotter than their smaller cousins. To fight the heat, she wore a full cooling suit over a full-body stocking made of thin, sweat-wicking material woven of thousands of tiny, flexible cooling lines. The tubes grew in size over her chest and vital areas, and when the suit was plugged into the BattleMech, pumps circulated the coolant and helped protect her from the worst of the heat. Resting on her shoulders was a neurohelmet, the interface between her mind and the BattleMech's internal software. Neurohelmets weren't full mental connections. They were only sensitive enough to translate a sense of balance and intentions to a BattleMech's gyro and musculature. In this case, her intentions were to close the distance. The engineers had used the weight savings gained from the high-tech engine, gyro, and small cockpit to arm her paladin with arguably the most dangerous weapon to grace modern battlefields, an Ultra-Class 20 autocannon. Able to chew off 2.5 tons of armor at its maximum rate of fire, it was capable of dispatching many BattleMechs with a single solid hit. However, she only had 2 tons of ammo, and it was a close-range weapon. Whatever came over that hill, she needed to be in knife fighting range before they realized what she was armed with and tried to back off. The enemies crossed over the hill almost simultaneously, one almost directly to her front and one almost 300 meters to her left. She turned her BattleMech left to run along her side of the ridge while keeping her arm-mounted autocannon pointed at the closer enemy. She almost laughed when she recognized it in the green-tinted night vision setting of her 360-degree monitor, a 35-ton Panther, a centuries-old sturdy workhorse of a light BattleMech, almost every variant of which carried a particle projectile cannon on its right arm. Some PPCs were less accurate at short ranges, some weren't, but at the end of the day, it was a light mech slower than she was. The Vorty MechWarrior fired first, a pair of quad short-range missile packs reaching out for her and then the PPC. With that, she saw her computer finally tag the Panther as a 10K2, and 5 of the missiles slammed into the Paladin's arms and legs, followed by the distinctive slap of a PPC blasting off over a half-ton of armor. The discharge of a PPC always played havoc with a BattleMech sensors and targeting pips for a second, so she waited a moment for her crosshairs to settle back into position and gleam gold before firing. She squeezed her main interlock trigger, and both her autocannon in her left arm and the medium extended range pulse laser in her right arm fired simultaneously. The laser stitched up the Panther's right leg, melting armor but doing no visible additional damage. The autocannon, however, started on the Panther's left arm, eating away at it with a series of explosive impacts before separating it from the torso at the shoulder. Her rounds continued chewing through the Panther's left side, gutting it from shoulder to hip, before finally spending itself mauling the light mech's center torso. Belching fire because of an internal ammunition cook-off, the Panther fell hard to the ground and remained motionless. She gasped as heat flooded into her tiny cockpit, the life support straining to bring the temperature back down. The second BattleMech paused in its advance toward the warehouse and turned to face her. Sweat ran down her face and beaded on her lips as they pulled into a feral grin. Good, she thought. Running you down would just piss me off. This has been an excerpt of Behind the Stick written by Jason Hansa. Across all our episodes, this is the first time we've returned to an author more than once. The #BlazerBoys leader takes the prize. His story was selected to be read by our patrons. You can find the epic conclusion to his story in Shrapnel, the official BattleTech magazine, issue 15. And that brings us to an end of another deployment of BungleTech. As we come to a close, I once again must share a few words honoring our Loremasters, this month in a prayer. Oh, all-knowing and effervescent Loremasters MagnumDanger and Retro Lazer, may your wisdom froth forth as hardgel gushes from our dismembered elementals as they seek glory on the battlefield. As hardgel patches their gaping wounds, may your wisdom patch the gaping ignorance found in our bungles. Selah. MechWarrior friends, as always, you can find us via Discord, email, Twitter, and Patreon, all linked in the description. A quick reminder to get those reviews in for our April episode, either on the podcast platform of which you listen, or via an email to bungletech@outlook.com, or via voice message to the Spotify for Podcasters link in the show description. Again, deadline to submit your review for it to be included in our April episode is April 7th, 2024. Let's wrap up today with a few words of wisdom from MagnumDanger. No one has played a game of BattleTech correctly, so relax and bungle on. Until next time, MechWarriors, good fortunes on the battlefield. Selah.
All podcast objectives complete. Podcast shutdown sequence initiated.